Hi everyone and welcome to a new video on the CBI channel. In this Django for Beginners tutorial series, we're creating a blog-style web application with Python Django. And by the end of this series, you will have a nice looking application where users can sign up and also sign in, and where different users can create blog posts. And next to blog post creation, we're also able to edit and to delete them. Now, this is already the seventh video in this series. And currently, our application looks like this. We already have a nice looking navigation menu. We can go to the My Blog Post page, and we're also able to create blog posts using these forms. Now, one thing that I want to do in this video is make these forms look a little bit better because they currently don't look that nice and we want our users to have a better experience. So in this video, we're going to use something called Django Crispy Forms to make our forms look beautiful. To realize that, we're going to be following 6 steps. First, we're going to make some installs because we need to install Django Crispy Forms and Crispy Bootstrap so that we can use the crispy forms and then we also have all of the CSS that we need so that our form has a nice looking styling. Then we're going to be loading the crispy form text into our project and we're going to add the styling to our current form to check out the difference. And as the last steps, I'm going to show you two different things. That is how you can render the forms individually instead of as a group, and also how we can adjust the sizing of our content form so the users have a little bit more space to fill that in. So let's get started with the first step, which is installing Django Crispy Forms. And we're currently on the documentation, and you can see that Django Crispy Forms is here to make your forms very elegant and dry. And the reason why we use this package instead of formatting the forms ourselves is that this works really well out of the box, and it avoids us having to write a lot of CSS ourselves, whereas this project has already done it for us. So we're going to go straight over to the installation part of the documentation, and we can install this package by simply doing the pip install of Django Crispy Forms. So I'm going to copy this one over and we're going to go to our project. And inside of our code, we're going to stop our terminal for a moment, and we're going to make sure that our virtual environment is activated. So if your virtual environment is not activated, then please do venv/scripts/activate because we need to install everything into our virtual environment. Now to install this, we can do Python -m, and then we do the pip install of Django Crispy Forms. And the install is now already done. So let's go back to this installation page and see what we need to do next. So if we scroll down a little bit, you notice that we also need to add the Crispy Forms to our installed apps section. So we're going to go back to our project and then to the blog folder. And in there we have the settings.py file. And on top of this file, we have a section called the installed apps. And in there, we're going to be adding the crispy forms. And let's save that. Okay, so the next thing that we also need to do is we need to install a template pack because the Django Crispy Forms actually uses some CSS frameworks. So as you know, we can write CSS in our main.css file, but there are also some packages that have CSS coming out of the box and work as kind of a frameworks. And examples of that is Bootstrap. So we also need to install Bootstrap so that we can use the CSS from that package into those forms. So what we will do is we're going to click on Bootstrap 4 because that is the latest one available. And then we also need to follow the installation guide for the Crispy Bootstrap 4. So what we'll do is I'm going to copy over this command of the pip install Crispy Bootstrap. And in our project, we're going to do Python -m and then do the pip install of the Crispy Bootstrap 4. So back in the documentation, and you now notice that we also need to do some additional things inside of our settings. So in our installed apps, we need to also include the Crispy Bootstrap 4. So we're going to go back to our blog folder and then to the settings.py file. And below the Crispy forms, we also put the Crispy Bootstrap. Now, next to that, we also need to add two additional settings because we need to let our Crispy Forms know that we're going to be using the Bootstrap 4 for the template packs. So we're going to copy over these two things right here. And we're going to place them in the settings file underneath the installed apps. It says that we use the allowed template pack of Bootstrap 4. And that is also used as the Crispy template pack. And let's save this. So now we should have all of the installations ready to make sure that we can use the Crispy Forms. So now that the installs are complete, we need to make sure that we can load the Crispy Forms into our project. And one of the first things that we need to do is we need to make a change to the base.html file. Currently, you can see that in the header section, we have a link of a style sheet. And that is how we load the main.css file, so the CSS styling, from this file into our actual project. Now, we've just installed the Bootstrap 4, which also has CSS styling. And to be able for that to be implemented to our project, we also need to add the style sheet of Bootstrap 4 into this file. Now, actually, it doesn't really state that in either of these two documentations, but if we go to the documentation of Bootstrap, we can actually see that we can copy paste the style sheet of the link into our project so that we can use it for our application. So I'm just going to copy over this CSS link from the documentation, and I'll also put this in the description. And then into our base.html file, we paste it in like this. And let's save that. And now we are able to use the CSS file of Bootstrap, which will apply some styling to our forms. So let's now apply the styling to our forms. And to do that, we need to first go to the place where our forms live, which is in the create.html page. Now, the first thing that we need to do on top of this file is make sure that we load the crispy form tags. So similarly, how we extend this and how we load static in the base.html file right here, we also need to do that for the crispy forms on the page where we want to use it. So we're going to do some open parentheses and then 2 times the percentage sign. And in the middle, we state load crispy underscore form underscore tags. And then we can go to the form. And all that we need to do is to apply the styling is adding a colon like this. And then we can do crispy. And just like that, it will apply the crispy styling on our forms. So let's now check out the result. So we're going to go to the terminal and we start our server with Python manage.py run server. And now when we go to my blog post and we go to create blog post, we actually get an error. So let's check what is going wrong. And I actually need to do crispy forms tags, not crispy form tags. And if we now reload the page, you notice that our form already looks much better. So we now have these nice looking forms like this, where we have the blog post title and also the content, and then the submit button. Now, one small change that I'm going to make to our button, because currently it's not filled in with color. So what we can do, because we now have the Bootstrap CSS in place, we can actually easily style this. So right now we have a class which says button, but if we add something called button and then do primary and we save this and we now refresh it, it actually shows up as a blue button. And the reason for this is that the commands that we've just done right here are actually Bootstrap for CSS commands, which will automatically style our project. So we can actually do the same thing on our blog post page where we have this A tag for creating the blog posts. And you can also see that right here, that is currently just a link. And if we would now add the class to our A tag and add some of these parentheses, we can also say here that this is a button and then do button primary. Let's save that. And now when we refresh this, this also becomes a button. So it's really easy to apply styling that way. But for now, the most important thing is that our forms look great. There are two things that I want to show you as well, because it can be quite important. So as a first thing, what we do right now in our create page is we render the entire block of forms as one thing. So we have two forms, but we just say form, so it plots everything underneath each other. But there can be scenarios that you want to place your forms in different places, and you want to determine the ordering yourself. Now, to make sure that you can do that, you can also render those forms individually. So to illustrate that, let's try to only render our form of title. So this one. So we only have that one, and we can then do content individually as well. So if we go to our create.html file, we can just comment out this form section right here because we don't really need it. And to render a form individually, we can do 2 times the squarely forms, but then I do form dot and then do the title like this. So we set the actual name of the form in the forms.py file. So right here. And then we can do the colon again, and we do as underscore crispy underscore field. And let's save that. And now when we get back, you can see that we only have the blog post title on the screen. So if I would also like to add the content, I can just copy that over and I'll say that I also want to have the form.content. And now we have two. Now, what this means is that I can theoretically just split them out. So I can create different boxes and place these forms in the different boxes that I would like. So that's quite helpful for you if you want to determine the ordering of your forms yourself. But for now, I'm just going to comment out the forms that are rendered individually. And I'm just going to show the form that we have, because for our use case, we don't need to render them individually. Now, the other thing that we're going to change is the content, because in the content section, I'm going to expect users to write the blog post, but there's not a lot of room to do so. And also, I cannot really extend this stuff. So I want to make a little bit of a change there. To do that, we can go to the forms.py file and then to our content form, and we're going to be adding some different things. So right now we have the widget, which is called text input. But actually, I'm going to change this because I'm going to make it text area and then without the capital. Let's save that. And now you notice that the area is becoming much bigger. And also on the bottom right, we can have this drag and drop thing where the user can make this area a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller. Now we can also customize how big this area is by default. And we do that by making a change to this widget. So we can say next to the placeholder that we want to see a number of rows. So I can say, for example, that I want to see 8 rows. And now when we get back and we refresh this, you notice that this area becomes smaller. And the higher the number, the more area you will have below where users can write those posts. So that's a way that we can make this look a little bit better. And that is actually all for this video. In this video, I showed you how we can use the Crispy Forms to make our project look a lot better. And in the next video, we're going to continue and I'm going to show you how we can read records from our database into our application. So that means write a query that retrieves all of the blog posts and then displaying them in a nice way on the My Blog Post page so that we can see all of the posts that have been created in our application on the page. I want to thank you very much for watching this video. If you've enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.